Hello, everybody. Welcome to another daily plan. I'm your boss, Joe Boss. Let's hop right on into these charts. We got a couple of chats here, waiting for some smashing US GDP. Yeah. US equities across the board are lighting up green today. Zoom in here a bit for you guys. Yeah, check that out. Just tapped that zone right there. Probably wouldn't have hit that entry. Needed to come a little bit further, but like I said, in another stream, I wouldn't have been surprised to see the 45.30s. Now it looks like this week we're gonna head into the 45.80s. Hello, Taj. Yeah, 45.80s it is for the S&P. Australia had a major rebound. This was, in my opinion, very, very tradable. Yeah. No clue where it's going to go next, as far as how high it can go this week. So I'm pretty cautiously optimistic, as I have been these last few streams. I think the equities outlook looks pretty good. Germany's equity index just tapped this peak in the distribution. Get that low data loaded and hit that. See, this is what I wanted to see on the S&P. Hey, Sama, nice to see you. Nice to see you guys here. Appreciate it. But yeah, that is pretty darn stellar. Wow. Talk about a good advertisement. Euro stocks hit a good spot on the lows. If it's going to continue higher, maybe it reaches 4,400. Just past it. Today, I'd actually would like to focus on the closing odds. Because now we're midway through the week. We're going into some major economic events. We have PCE coming out, US GDP. We also have the final PMIs coming out of Europe. We have quite a few things coming up. Also, the OPEC meeting. There's quite a few things on the docket over the next few days. And if those events come out as expected, as they're, as we're going into those events, traders have expectations as, well, maybe OPEC probably keeps their current policy. Maybe we hit our forecasts. We hit the consensus forecasts on those different economic indicators I just mentioned. So assuming consensus or nominal data, let's look at maybe where things could end up towards the end of the week, right? We can also pull up the seasonal data here. Yeah. A bit of overlap, but it's a bit more bearish here on the Euro stocks for the seasonal closes. I think let's go to the S&P, pull up that indicator as well. Yeah, pretty flat odds. You do have a bit of a bump here, and a lot of your closes around here, but if we look at these closes, yeah, there's also quite a bit of overlap. Closing distribution here. So yeah, I think it would not be so unreasonable unless we just had runaway higher move here. And I'm not totally expecting S&P to hit 4,600 this week, but it is really in the cards. You just made a new high. That's pretty significant higher high. This is the last time we hit 4,600. So yeah, would not be surprised to see us at least close the week higher than we currently are priced on the S&P. Let's check out the NASDAQ, if I can find it. Here's the NASDAQ. Again, all the equities are lighting up green right now. NASDAQ not as bullish on the ranges. How about on the seasonal data? Ooh, pretty flat as well. See, 2020, 2015. Effectively, it's a guess where we end up closing, but I think we end up closing probably above 16,100 if I had to guess. Again, the distribution kind of disagrees, but when you look at the seasonal data is a bit more bullishly skewed. And again, next peak here is around 16.2. Kind of the lower half of the 16.2 range. So yeah, I would not be surprised to see us move higher, especially on the expectations from all the news today. Bill Ackman came out and talked about how he's like, oh yeah, the Fed's definitely going to get more dovish. We might even see the cut come in the first quarter. So that's like March. Right now, a lot of the expectations for FOMC and all these central banks doing their first rate cuts, they're all getting pulled up to like the first half or the third quarter, depending on the bank you're looking at, of next year. So as those rate cut expectations get pulled closer to today, rather than in the back end of 2024, it makes markets a bit more bullish. Like, oh, great, we won't have to pay such high financing fees for all of our stuff. Let's see here. Let's move on to FX. Let me know if you guys want me to check out anything as I go through the FX charts here. Again, I want to focus on the closing odds. New Zealand yen has a bit more give to it on the weekly distribution, but on the close, wow, those are some pretty bullish closing odds, huh? Yeah, would not be surprised. And also, as far as I understand, the yen is still expected to weaken a bit. There hasn't been too significant hawkish commentary coming out of the BOJ. Let's see here. New Zealand dollar. Yeah, New Zealand dollar is holding up. It had a bit of a reversal here. Yeah, you can see it tapped that spot on the high distribution. It did take a shot at 62, and that has worked out fine. But you can see the yield spreads by the color of these bars. The yield spreads are still quite positive. Let's check this out on the day. Let's check out those yield spreads on the day. There's probably still, yeah, they're still very, very positive. And that is some bullish yield spread here on the New Zealand. And I've given some commentary over the last few days like, oh, you know, New Zealand's probably gonna do a bit better than Australia, in my opinion, based off the yields outlook. Short term. Maybe not necessarily into next year because there's still hiking odds being priced in, but the RBNZ meeting that came out today, apparently from the forecasts that were released from the bank, it seems like there's a slightly more significant pricing in of a rate hike in the first quarter of next year from the RBNZ. So that should probably lift the New Zealand dollar quote. I think I read that Westpac's interested in buying dips around this 4,100 spot here, or 6,100 spot. Taj, you're currently in pound yen short, pound CAD buy, dollar yen sell. Well, dollar yen probably was a good one. If I can go ahead and pull that one up. Yeah, it was a good one for the last few days here. It's kind of given back a bit here. Yields are slightly improving on the daily. Let's go ahead and bring up the closing odds here for the day. Yeah, looks like probably some sideways action for the rest of the day. As for the week, yeah, you don't close down here all too often, so I would not be surprised if we had a bit more positive drift going into the end of the week. Yeah, a bit hard to tell based off the seasonal data, unless you have a ride back up to here, but I don't know, you'd have to have some pretty interesting data, some pretty interesting commentary to come out to close up here. I think we're probably going to end up effectively closing sideways. Let's actually check up on the DXY. Yeah, it's got maybe some positive drift still in it. Yeah, probably a bit of positive drift. Not too sure where we'll end up by the end of the week on the dollar. But I'm not insanely bearish on the dollar at the moment. Let's go ahead and check this out. Yeah, you can see my bullish expectation here. And it looks like dollar CAD, the yield spreads are starting to improve here on the 12-hour. Let's bring up those daily yield spreads here. Well, those daily yield spreads are improving, but they are very small improvements. Yeah. You have one or two pieces of commentary out by, I think, Wallace. From the FOMC. I think he went ahead and he said something along the lines of, you know, we could probably begin loosening policy sometime earlier next year if we get a few more months, several more months of improving inflation data. So long inflation continues drifting lower, dollar will probably continue to drift lower as well as expectations for the rate start to improve. We have GDP numbers in minutes. Well, let's see. Yeah, I'll pull it up. Let's see here. Yeah, in about 13, 12 minutes, you got US GDP. So we'll see if US GDP comes in stronger or weaker. Also, we're getting preliminary PCE numbers, the core PCE. That'll be interesting. Yeah. Preliminary PCE. I got Financial Juice open, just checking it out here. Yeah, some good stuff. Let's check out that pound yen. It's still up on the day. Yeah, it's probably... Yeah, that's probably the low for the week right there. Would not be surprised if that was the low for the week. Probably a bit more sideways action here for the rest of the day, depending on maybe how US GDP shows up. We'll definitely tune into that and check out the DXY and the US equities as that turns up. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out where we're likely to close on a few of these assets going into the end of the week. Yeah, a bunch of pretty uniform looking odds there. Would not be surprised to see New Zealand dollar close more sideways into the end of the week. Might be a bit of chop from here. And then next week's odds are pretty clustered around this area right here. There's some overlap in the range probabilities there. Let's see what else we got. Let's check out the good old euro dollar. Well, the yield spreads are starting to turn white, the bar colors. So let's go ahead and check out those yield spreads here. Ooh, we're starting to get a bit of a negative tilt on our yield spread. Yeah, that's a pretty negative tilt here. Yields are not developing positively today. Especially on the latter end of the curve from the 7-year to the 30-year. This whole segment right here. Yeah. Not so hot there. The 2-year, though, is still holding up. And the 5-year is kind of hanging in there, but it took a hit today. Let's actually bring up the high and the low weeklies. Well, wouldn't be surprised if that was the top of the week there. Let's go ahead and bring up our probability pivots. Oh, so it's kind of in an interesting spot right here. Well, maybe if US GDP slows down today, if it comes in weaker than expected, the whole idea of, I mean, for the last, I think, month or so, actually more like 2 months now at the end of November, there's been a market theory, a view that going into the end of this year and into 2024, that the growth or the relative improvement, economic improvement in the rest of the G7 versus the United States will accelerate. So that means the United States economy slows down. It doesn't jump lower. It doesn't jump higher. It just ticks a bit lower, a bit under expectations. And as those slower, slightly lower than expected expectations come in for US economic data, that provides relatively, if you look at Europe's data, if you look at the rest of the G7, they're not slowing down as quickly. So there's a handful of institutions and outlooks providing commentary on, there's this relative growth situation. Let's see here. Aussie dollar. See you in a bit, Sama. Yeah, we're getting GDP in about 6 minutes here. I'll pull it up on the screen when we're there. Let's go ahead and pull up the Aussie dollar. And Aussie dollar is in the red right now. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, I think I had some slightly more bullish expectations on this more positive day with these yield spreads. But it looks like that might have been the top for the week there. You don't hit every single one of these forecasts, that's for sure. You have to be reactive to new information that comes out. Especially when you're doing things discretionarily. Yeah, you do not close down here a bit, so I would not be surprised to see a bit of a bounce here on Aussie dollar going into end of day. Oh wow, that was a nice hit on the high. It's kind of overshot this spot here in the low distribution. You don't come down here all too often. Yeah, I would have expected it maybe to come down a bit lower. Let's check it out for the week. Well, yeah, there's this spot that was kind of interesting, but yeah, it hit the edge of this peak, and the sellers stepped in. And yeah, I would not be surprised to see. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of these distributions, and unless you get, let's say, that US GDP number and some of the information coming out later in this week, if that US data comes in slightly worse than expected, and let's say that PCE inflation measure, those preliminary numbers come in lower, especially those PCE numbers. If you start to get some general weakening in the US data, as we get European and the rest of the G7, some rest of the G7 data over the latter half of this week and into next week, maybe you see some more bullish relief in some of these pairs. You get some more risk on move. It hit a monthly pivot target at the top there too. Well, let's go ahead and pull that up. Well, it definitely hit the target much earlier. I don't think you trade up here all that often. Yeah, you definitely do not. This is definitely positive trend, positive momentum going on here. Because these candles are much, much smaller in size compared to these back here. Yeah. Nice positive momentum. A lot of US charts look like this. I'll go ahead and pull up financial juice as we go into the US economic stuff. Just getting things set up. All right, now we got financial juice open. You can see US GDP coming out here in about 2.5 minutes. Core PCE preliminary. So if this comes out lower than 2.4, that would be especially beneficial for the doves. All right, let's see how this works out. We got some bullish movement going into this release. All right. We're just going to chill till this thing prints. See what happens in 30 seconds.
Ten seconds.
I got the Financial Juice Squawk open, so you'll hear his commentary on it. Oh, wow. Bit of a move lower here.
5.2%, 5.2%, higher than forecast at 5%.
Wow.
Still waiting on the rest of the numbers to come through.
Looks like some guys came in and bought up that dip.
So the US GDP deflator 3.5%, 3.5% as expected. Core PCE prices prelim at 2.3%,
core PCE
2.3%, lower than forecast, 2.4%. The GDP price index now 3.6%, 3.6%. That's higher than forecast, 3.5%.
Up and away.
For Canada, the current account at minus 3.22 billion. That's a deficit of 3.22 billion. That's lower than the expected surplus of 1 billion. US wholesale inventories month over month advanced minus 0.2%, minus 0.2%, lower than forecast 0.2%. Retail inventories ex auto advanced minus 0.9%, minus 0.9%. PCE prices prelim at 2.8%, 2.8%. And the US advanced goods trade balance at a deficit 89.84 billion. That's minus 89.84 billion. That's lower than the expected deficit of 86.5 billion. So looking to the markets here, just noting some weakness in the dollar, some whipsawing in the S&P 500 as well. So again, a lot of that data did come out delayed, but the GDP quarter over quarter second estimate higher than expected at 5.2% from the expectations of 5%.
So let's see how that S&P is moving. Yeah, pretty flat. Looks like the Canadian dollar is strengthening on that. Gonna turn off the stream. The Financial Juice stream, that is. Let's check out how this is moving the yield spreads. Let's go ahead and check out euro dollar. Should be positive. Yeah, it's gone from negative to a more neutral look. How about the pound? Hey, the pound got its bounce. Let's go ahead and check out what the yield spreads say there. It's still on the bit negative side here. Like to see some improvement there. Let's go ahead and check out the Aussie dollar. Seems like it's holding. Nice positive development on the yield spreads. And New Zealand. pretty neutral at the moment. Yeah, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot of movement. Those are some good numbers, though, for risk on. So while GDP came in as expected, that core PCE coming down is quite good. Let's go ahead and check out pound. Yeah, it's still holding up. Still pretty meh at the moment. I definitely agree with what you're talking about, Wares. Let's go back to Euro. Ah, looks like Euro's pulled back. So a bit of a whipsaw here on the euro dollar on the release. Same thing with the S&P. Looks like TradingView is getting bogged down. A lot of people are trying to load up charts as this data gets released, when a very simple indicator like this centered moving average, this trend cycle thing, when it takes too long to load, when it doesn't load just instantly, it means a lot of people are loading up TradingView. Their back end is loading stuff. Oh man, some pretty negative developments. Let's go ahead and check this out on the daily ranges. And we'll go ahead and switch back to the full screen view of the charts. Yeah, PCE came in good for the risk on traders. But it doesn't seem like things are moving quite yet. Oh, we got some more positive development on the yield spreads here for the hour. We'll see if that carries on through. Still not super positive developments here on the hour. Yeah. Not looking fantastic. And USD CAD has some particularly positive yield spreads here. That might continue moving up. Well, I'd probably say, is there any other charts you guys want me to take a look at here? Probably oil. You want me to explain what PC is? That's, what is it? Person consumption? Personal consumption expenditures. That's what that is. Let's go ahead and pull up Investopedia on it. PCE accounts for about 2/3 of domestic spending and is a significant driver of GDP. Personal consumption expenditures, measure of consumer spending. Consumer is most of GDP. So yeah, the fact this core PCE came in lower. The headline PCE preliminary also came in lower. Let's check out what NQ is doing, NASDAQ. Ooh, hit a peak. Did it just hit that? Yeah, it just hit that. So would not be surprised if the top for the day on NASDAQ is in. Let's check out the Dow. Dow has had a nice rise higher, that's for sure. I don't know, I thought that we'd see a bit more of a significant risk-on move. Maybe we'll see some follow-through into the end of today on some of these dollar pairs. Because that falls in line with the expectations that the US will probably slow relative to the rest of the world. Should be beneficial, especially for the Australian dollar. A lot of bullish expectations around the Australian dollar have come out in the year ahead forecasts and outlooks that I've read. And short term, not super significant improvement in the yields here. Not a super significant improvement. I mean, we'll say we still have the rest of the trading day ahead of us. Hey James, nice to see you. Yeah, my expectation would have been probably more significant risk on, given that effectively consumer inflation has ticked lower. I would have assumed that would have been a bit more beneficial to a lot of these USD pairs. And looks like the pound is kind of holding in there. We had a nice positive reaction on the release of the news, but it doesn't seem like much else. Yeah. We had this wick up higher on euro dollar, and now we're seeing the move lower. A bit counterintuitive based off what a lot of analysts were expecting, frankly. Yeah. The gains from Eurodollar today are gonzo. At least at the moment. Again, 15-minute candle, this thing can zip right on back up into the end of the day. Pretty good odds still of it having a positive drift into the end of the day, so I don't think all hope is lost. So, yeah, this is really something that is going to have to be watched throughout the rest of the day, how these dollar pairs react to, frankly, some relatively risk-on news. The reaction has been negative so far, but I don't know, my expectation would be risk-on right now. Let's see, any charts you guys want me to check out? Any particular assets? Things haven't moved a whole lot since that GDP and PCE came out. I could bring this up. This is an outlook that I particularly enjoyed reading, especially when I was newer to reading outlooks, was these international economic outlooks, these monthly outlooks by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has some of the easier to read outlooks, in my opinion. Because you'll hear me, if you watch these streams often enough, me talk about, oh, you know, this outlook, that expectation. A lot of it comes from analysts at these institutions. And this is just public facing. You can go to Wells Fargo's site and find this. But I put a link to it in the Discord. And they have a whole section here called FX Forecasts. And when you jump down, there's this whole table here. On their forecasts for all these different currencies going out quarter by quarter. And you can see they have particularly strong bullish expectations for the Australian dollar in the latter half of 2024. Same thing with the New Zealand dollar. It might be a bit hard for you guys to read, but that's why I always recommend you read these things on your own time. Check that out. We expect the Australian dollar to outperform next year. And this is their forecast expectations. Most bullish Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar there, yen. A lot of forecasts have bullish expectations for yen next year. And let's see here, is US dollar? Yeah, US dollar is, well, that's the trade weighted US dollar. That's not exactly the USD DXY index. Trade weighted is different than DXY. So yeah, it looks like we're currently holding those prices on the euro. Corn, you want me to check out corn? I think I have corn. No, not on this chart. Corn futures. Well, it's moved sideways so far, and it looks like it'll probably continue going sideways into the end of the day here. Yeah, you find your low a lot of the time around here on the day. You did have this spike up at the beginning of the day here. I wonder what that was about. Yeah, you've had some pretty harsh moves on corn these last few days, huh? Let's check it out on the weekly ranges. Yeah. Wow. What a move. Would not be surprised to see corn trade around like 44.7, 44.6. I don't think you close down here all that often. Yeah. So maybe around Thursday, there'll probably be some relief into end of week. And WTI got hit yesterday particularly hard, but it has recovered. Probably hit the high on the day, though. Yeah. Maybe if it's a particularly bullish day, you end up closing above that 78 handle, but I don't know, most of the time you end up closing in this general area here, so maybe it's hit the high for the day now. Again, not super great movement on New Zealand, probably some negative drift for the rest of the day. If this news doesn't help support these USD pairs, I'd be kind of surprised, frankly. Looks like it's kind of holding up, but we'll see how Eurodollar performs going into end of day. Again, I'm still hopeful about being risk on, given that those US PCE preliminary numbers came in a smidge lower. But maybe there's some other factors that are being taken into account that we're not necessarily aware of, that are being modeled. But it seems like pretty much all these USD pairs are holding up. They had a spike higher, a spike lower, and net, everything seems to be relatively flat. I don't know if you would consider, like, for example, here on New Zealand dollar, a negative 6 pip move in the last hour. Oh man, it had a negative reaction to the news. Like, yeah, maybe there's some positive drift that comes into the end of the day. I don't know about CAD though. There was some news on the Canadian dollar that came out. It's a Canadian current balance expected was 1 billion. The realized was negative 3 billion. So I'm not too sure if that's good for the Canadian. Honestly, New Zealand's pretty flat here. Now let's go ahead and check out some of these yens. The yens seem to be holding up quite well. A lot of bottom wicks here. Euro yen seems to be holding up here over the last hour. Same thing with CAD yen, even though it had that bad, relatively bad, I think, current account report. Pound yen is green right now. It's holding up. Dollar yen continuing its rebound here. And New Zealand yen's just holding flat. Not a whole lot of crazy movement. DXY saw a spike here. It's positive right now on the hour. Wow, check that out. You had this, that's actually kind of similar to what corn looked like, huh? Corn had that big spike up on the day, and dollar had this big spike down. Except on the dollar, it hit this peak right here. Yeah, that might have been a decent spot to take a shot long. I don't know if now is a decent spot. It does seem like it's probably at the likely top on the day, unless you're expecting more follow through. But given those economic numbers, I'm not super in favor of risk off trades at the moment. Again, I'm just checking out how New Zealand and Aussie are doing, because those are kind of your barometers for risk on and FX at the moment, given all the positive commentary around expectations for those two currencies. Yeah, not a whole lot of movement. Nothing crazy here. But I think I'll say it one last time. I would not be surprised to see, given that economic data, some improvement in Aussie and New Zealand going into the end of today. But yeah, I don't think there's not much else to commentate on unless we have some other news developing here. Fed swap contracts fully price in a rate cut by the FOMC by May. And that was given 1 minute before the PCE and GDP numbers. Again, that's pretty risk-on news. So kind of surprised to see the move lower, but we still got the rest of the day ahead of us. Oh, Germany's inflation came in lower. Significantly lower. Oh, yeah, and then there was this news headline about Saudi Arabia offers to invest in Iran to limit Israel-Hamas war. OECD, we expect a soft landing, but this is far from certain. Ay, ay, ay. OECD says, though, they don't expect rate cuts at the Fed before the second half of 2024. So they think that the market might be a bit more aggressive. You want me to check out gold, James? Your thing, my man. Let's see how gold is reacting to this. Net flat. I wonder what that circle's about. I think that was a weekly forecast, no? Yeah. I think I said in a stream or two ago, yeah, this is probably the spot I'd be expecting a high. Man, did we knock that out of the park or what? Some hits, some misses. But it's all a bunch of odds. Yeah. Well, high for gold is probably in for the week. We're seeing continuation lower on the dollar pairs. Let me check that out. Oh, yeah. Those are some fresh lows. So it ain't holding up here. Not good. Not good. Same thing with Euro, not holding up. New Zealand seems to be not changing too much. Yeah. Isn't that a bit interesting, huh? Oh yeah, gold was definitely a big mover. Yeah. Big mover on gold. But again, I'm kind of curious why the drift lower on some of these dollar pairs, given the relatively risk-on news. Obviously, there's something going on that we're not seeing. Who knows? Things can always change over the next few hours going into the end of the day. Again, not too much here. I think I'll watch this over the rest of the day over on the Plan to Profit Discord. So if any of you guys want to hang out with me and we watch this, see if this develops worse or it improves going into the end of the day, I'll be around on the Discord today, hanging out. But now's probably the time to call it for the stream. So I'll go ahead and say thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow and in a bit.